hands touching your bright face. So I am home. Daddy is home for the third time. Do you remember me? The next one is called Leaving. It's from a chapbook. Strangers took the last cows, loaded them terrified up a sloped ramp. Uncertain hooves clattered on cold metal, dark truck mouth opened wide to receive them. Their breath hung white, startled in frigid morning air. They had never left the earth like this, had only known the field of pasture, concrete floor of the barn, a cold creek bottom where pebbles washed over clean sand. From the house, he watched them go, heard the truck's rumble fade with distance, inhaled the remaining silence as it settled over the farm. His barn was empty now, missing the big warm bodies of cows with their stupid trust, sounds of lowing, clank of milking stanchions as they shifted their bodies' burden. In a feedlot somewhere, they would patiently wait for auction as the sun rose on another morning, the day caring nothing for a herd of cows, or the man still staring out his window. This is a newer poem. It's called Let Her Ride. It's 7 a.m. and she's drinking her second cup of coffee alone, the way she does every morning. But this morning, as the sky turns from sleepy gray to empty blue, all she can think about is getting in her car, lighting a cigarette she hasn't smoked in 30 years, and driving fast as she can, blaring old music like Abbey Road, Disraeli Gears, or maybe Beggar's Banquet, so she could sing along with sympathy for the devil as loud as she wants, with nobody to hear and nobody to care that she is smoking again, driving too fast and still wondering who killed the Kennedys. And she thinks maybe if she can get the car going fast enough, she might dissolve into the past, explode through some time barrier, and cruise along the mother road before its total decline, before the litter of McDonald's and Subways, love truck stops, and giant Walmarts. She wants to drive past motor courts, grocery stores that have gas pumps out front with flying red horses painted on them, and diners with names like Roy's Place and Ruby's Cafe, where a piece of coconut cream pie costs 35 cents and coffee a dime. She craves a route across the lonely heartland and high plains of America before her face had lines etched around her eyes and her mouth had not yet become her mother's mouth, before her husband lost his mind drifting down the Mekong River when his buddy's guts splattered all over his lap. And she wishes she could fall asleep at night and not worry how dying will take her hand and lead her someplace she might not want to go. But it is only 7 a.m. and she has to get dressed to go to a job she's hated for years, relieved it's nearly time to retire, but afraid she will retire to an empty room of white walls with nothing to do but dream day after day of driving way too fast, blaring the Rolling Stones or the Beatles, careening down some flat, lonesome road, chasing after her one and only life. I'm going to change the pace. I usually write either very sad or serious poems. This one is, well, it's neither. It's called Chickens. The chickens were up to no good, scratching and fussing their way up Main Street. You could tell they were plotting something as they tittered to each other, tilting their heads, beady little eyes on the dull sky. Stopped traffic right there in the center of town until some woman in dirty overalls got out of her truck and shooed them off with a rake. They scattered, regrouped, huddled together behind bushes on the church lawn. The chickens were not unlike unruly toddlers who climb over gates and playpens to run laughing through the house, pulling a toilet paper and overturning the dog's water bowl. But the chickens and the guys are different. The chickens and the toddlers are different from the guys in the Armani suits. You know, the ones who sit around polished teak tables pleasantly plotting. The guys with seductive smiles telling you that offshore drilling is safer now. Not to worry when the water coming out of your tap catches fire if you put a match to it. You can put the toddlers back in their playpens Clean up the soggy toilet paper and spilled water. Give them a kiss. And the chickens? I don't mind if they set up camp in downtown Northfield. All they leave behind is a little shit and scraggy feathers, sometimes an egg. But the guys in the suits? This next poem was written for a friend of mine whose brother died last winter. It's called The Memorial for George. He was dead, and for hours his family drove through the desert south of Tucson. They carried his gray, gritty ashes, but no one could find his favorite place, the site where he pitched his tent to camp, drinking cups of fiery whiskey, smoking cigarette after cigarette, forgetting to eat, growing thin like the wind he saw but never felt blow through his bones. His old mother, an aging brother, sisters and their spouses wandered the desert, seeking out the perfect point of earth to scatter who he used to be. As the day was ending, they came upon a wash near a shelter of naked branched cottonwoods. It was a good place. So they left their cars to say some words and finally let him go. In the January dusk, a flock of doves flew in, settled at the lip of the wash to drink what light was still held in the water. Someone whispered, "Listen," and somewhere an owl hooted once, twice, 3 times, and was silent. The last poem I'm going to read is called Zion, Utah. It's set in the future. It's about a grandson remembering his grandmother. It's dedicated to Dane. Zion, Utah. After a long day's hike through slot canyons and over red slick rock, a young man watches the light slip towards slumber in a western sky. He settles on a stone shelf and takes a clementine from his pack and remembers how his grandmother always brought him this fruit. The small, sweet orange, she said, came from faraway places like Morocco and Spain. He remembers some lullaby she crooned to him until he was too big for her arms to hold, some lullaby that made him feel both sad and safe. He was the one she took on walks through the shadowed woods, across bright fields of grass, or out into the sapphire night where she spoke to him about things he did not yet understand. She would go away for a long time and he'd miss her, think of her, then forget her. But she always returned, her face growing more creased with what he now knows was the luminous light of the high desert. He is a man now, his grandmother dead for more years than he knew her, and now the past seems to him like an orchard of things lost. The stream where they toss sticks and threw rocks during the humid summer is a dried-up trickle. Most of his childhood forest is slashed to bramble and weeds, and nothing there is as green as it used to be. He has left his home in the dwindling forests of the east to trek across the geography of rock and sky, carrying the old backpack she passed on to him, with words tucked in its pockets, shards of pottery and juniper berries, sage dry as dust in its seams. He keeps them, listens carefully as they murmur one to the other, telling stories, holding counsel, reminding him to walk the earth with quiet feet. Tonight he watches the light slip towards slumber in a western sky. Darkness presses in, soft and soundless. The rock face he leans against has saved the warmth of the day inside itself. He eats his clementine, some bread and cheese, pours 2 fingers of bourbon into a tin cup from his grandmother's flask. He is tired and welcomes the coming galaxy of night. The first stars flicker, and he wonders on their ancient passage. He considers making a small fire, but the stars will be brilliant if he lets the darkness have its way. The young man thinks he hears her voice as a whisper in the faint, dry wind, and for a moment he misses the forest of his childhood. He unrolls his sleeping bag, sips his spirits. The night will be long.
Woo!